Hello, my name is Adam, and I am going to take you through the actual labor costing capability within the Cognitus industry solution for government contractors, or CIS-GovCon. Actual labor costing, which we also refer to as ALC, is comprised of a number of different applications, which you can see on my screen. We're going to focus on the day-to-day actual labor costing capability of first looking at time entry as it comes from the timesheet. We'll look at that in the general ledger using the display line items in general ledger app. Then we will go take a look at the ALC capability of recalculating those labor costs based on actual payroll. So after your payroll executes, there's a periodic process in actual labor costing to go determine if the rates that were derived in the timesheet at the time of entry need to be adjusted to reflect actual payments for a given payroll run. The application in ALC that takes care of this calculation is called the true-up posting application. So you would run it periodically, typically after a payroll run. After seeing the execution of the true-up postings, we'll briefly look at the log, but then we'll pivot back to the general ledger, which is really the best place to see the results of the actual labor costing features in their totality by looking at the original time entry and then looking at the adjustments that were made by the ALC application. So let's dig right in. I'm going to go into display line items in the general ledger. This is a standard application within SAP to look at line items that are posted in the general ledger. I have predefined views in this display line items in the general ledger application that are oriented towards this ALC demo. Let's first take a look at our time postings for September of 2023. By the way, while this report generates, I'll mention that if you haven't already, we have a video on the Cognitus Industry Solution timesheet that's an SAP-centric timesheet that works across the entire SAP solution suite and can also be integrated with third-party solutions. So if you haven't seen that and you want to see how the financials related to time get posted in the system through the experience of the timesheet, please check out our demo related to the timesheet. But meanwhile, here we are in the general ledger taking a look at our time postings for September of 2023. I'm also just going to go select another layout that will show you how this data can be displayed by project, WBS element, and person. So one of the powers of standard SAP is that time that's entered into a timesheet is recorded not only against the cost objective, typically represented by what's called a WBS element in SAP, which is kind of like a project bucket. But you not only see that the time is posted against that particular line item for the project, but you also get to see the person that time is coming from. So that's represented with this personnel number in the posting. And this is data that we're looking at that came from the Cognitus timesheet within S/4HANA. So you see the quantity, you see the cost that was derived for that particular quantity, which would be based on the rate that's derived from actual labor costing. So what is this rate? Well, you have two options. Some clients choose to use standard costing in their timesheet postings and then have actual labor costing true that up to your actual labor rates. Or you can have the timesheet posting use a rate that is an actual labor rate estimate coming from the actual compensation for your employees, and still have the true-up process to account for any small differences between that wage-based estimate and what was actually paid for a given period. This is especially important for scenarios like dilution for exempt employees. In this particular scenario, this rate was derived from the employee's salary, and yet we had compensation vary from the weekly wage for this particular employee. And so we have a example set up where there's a difference in the effective rate for this employee, and we'll see the results of that after we take a look at the ALC calculation and posting. So let's back out of just looking at time coming from the timesheet, and we'll take a look at our actual labor costing true-up posting capability. Again, this is a periodic process that you would run either at month end or in concert with your payroll runs so that you know you have actual payroll values against which to calculate your actual labor rates and compare them to what was posted in the timesheet in the view that we just left. So let's take a look at our ALC calculation for our actual payroll data for September of 2023. This has already been posted, so we're doing a test run in this particular demo, but we'll still be able to see the output of this calculation. The system gathers together the applicable time cards that were applicable to a particular payroll run. It determines who are the people that are relevant for that particular payroll run, what are the hours that are relevant for that particular pay period, what was the compensation amount for that particular employee for this pay period, and what was the effective rate resulting from that calculation. Now, this can be a calculation that's run for a single pay period or across multiple pay periods. In case, for example, you wanted to do an end of year calculation to figure out what an effective rate was for an employee for the entire year based on their total compensation for the year and their total actual hours worked for the year. The rest of this log is doing an employee by employee calculation, similar to the one that I just ran through, except now it's also showing the postings that would be made time card by time card to apply an actual rate for an employee that was calculated against the actual time cards for that employee. A lot of our time cards are set up with a rate of that results in $360 an hour for an 8-hour day coming from the timesheet. So we'll just stop at this example and take a look at what the system's doing here. It's figured out that based on the actual compensation of that employee, that the cost for those 8 hours is not $360, but should be $476.16 instead. So depending on how you would like to configure your actual labor costing solution, the system can either post the delta against the cost objective. So in this case, the $116.16 against the cost objective, or the system could offset fully the original posting amount that was derived based on best estimates available at the time of posting of the timesheet. That's what we're seeing here, the full offset of the 360 originally. A posting of the actual labor cost for that particular time card, in this case, 8 hours. So we see the actual wage configured posting of $476.16, and then a reconciliation between the two. So you get essentially in this configuration for this particular demo system, it's what we would call full offset and reposting. Full offset, reposting of the actual cost, and then in order to balance the whole entry and also for reporting purposes, the difference between the two, meaning the delta posting. Let's go take a look at that in something that's a little bit more user-friendly, which is back to our general ledger itself. If I return to my display line items in the general ledger, and this time, instead of looking at just my original time postings, I took a look at my time and ALC postings. I think this illustrates very well what the system's doing. So here we see our original time postings. Here's an example coming in at that $360 for the 8 hours. Again, this could be coming from standard cost, which would be like an activity type rate in SAP speak, or it could be coming from the rate that would be applicable for a particular resource employee, for example, based on their actual wages divided by their expected working hours. Then the ALC posting takes a look at payroll for that employee for that particular period and determines, you know what, the actual rate, effective rate should be $476.16. And I'm going to offset the original posting for $360. So that now what do I have for that collection of postings on the 1st of September for personnel number 23. I have evidence of my original cost posting. I have offsetting of it so that I can still, report on it. And then I have my actual labor cost posting for that particular cost objective. Let's narrow this down to just look at a single posting. 4th of September, 2023. Yep, here's that same information. 8 hours coming from the timesheet, either standard cost or actual labor cost estimate based on wages, depending on your configuration. Offset posting, actual labor cost. Again, all against the same cost objective, all using the same work date from the timesheet, grouped together for reporting. And that's actual labor costing in a nutshell with Cognitus. Thank you.